Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Toby Gennaro, and I'll be your presenter for today. The topic for today is live technical analysis. So I'm going to be talking through just a series of specific trade setups that we'll be seeing in real time when we take a look at the charts, and we'll just kind of walk through those and include some of the Nadex contracts, utilize the platform to do that, and show you how we look for some of these trading strategies in the price action. For those of you that are on the live webinar today, if you have questions during this session, you can type those into the question box on your screen. I'll be asking you some questions, so we'll try to keep it interactive. I think that always makes it a little bit more interesting. As normal, we need to put up the risk warning and disclaimer. Leave this up for about 30 seconds or so. If you guys could just have a quick read through, that would be good. What this is saying in brief is that we provide education only, which means we do not give any financial advice. And as most of you know, trading the markets can be risky. It's not suitable for everyone, and you should seek independent professional advice. All right, everybody good with that one? And just one more disclaimer here from Nadex. If you can have a quick read through this one, it's a short one, and then we'll jump to the content. Okay, let's get started then. So you can kickstart your trading each Tuesday morning with this regular feature from the trading team at Trade with Precision. And with so much going on in the market each and every week, the big question here is how can we spot opportunities across multiple markets, multiple time frames? So you can join us weekly for this insightful live webinar where we focus on technical and trend analysis across major markets to help find an answer to that question. So let's go ahead, jump into the live charts, see what kind of trading opportunities we can find for today. So what I did here before the session kicked off is I took a look at a couple of charts and that I thought might be good to consider for some potential trading opportunities, or at least kind of talk through some of the price action and some of the candle formation setting up. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of those. Just give me a moment here to get my my screen set up and see. Let's see if you guys can see my current screen here on the Nadex platform. I've actually switched over to utilizing the Nadex charts. Hope you guys can appreciate that, since that's pretty much what you folks more than likely are probably using, and it is way cheaper than using any type of a third-party system. And on top of that, I think Nadex has done a pretty good job putting these charts together. They've spent some money on R&D to make all that happen. So I think that's a pretty good thing for you. So we'll utilize those charts. We have the daily time frames all the way down through a 2-minute, a 1-minute chart, some even finer than that. But more than likely, we'll stick around some of the ones that make sense here, maybe as low as the 5-minute charts. But here we're looking at a 2-hour chart on the Aussie dollar. Why don't we start upwards on the daily? And as you can see, we've got our charts set up here with the MACD indicator. We also have the RSI. So we have a couple of indicators that we're working with. We don't utilize these as they're traditionally used, but we utilize these for price convergence or price divergence. And I'll explain that in a minute if we see any of that. So here we're on the daily chart. We've got a little bit of sideways action here, but the reason I'm bringing this one up is I like the flat level that is setting up right here. It's fairly precise. On the daily chart, we have a swing high right here. We have some lower high, lower low action, and then we have basically a bump up, but we have a swing high, and then we have a lower high, and then a lower high, and then we basically have this flat level here that is fairly precise with one, call this 2 touches, 3 touches, and then a 4th touch, and then we're actually getting some small candles consolidating right at that flat level, looking more than likely for a breakdown to a new lower low. And so more than likely what I would consider is from this flat level right here, right around that 70-80 level, I'll look at the swing high. up around that 73 level. Usually that range where it's been consolidating from the flat level to the swing high, usually if it breaks this flat level, that'll be the move that it'll make, which will be basically down to this level, which is the most recent swing low. And so if we get a break of that level, more than likely that's the move that'll make down to around, say, 68.80. And so when I go and I start looking at, some other time frames to get some confirmation of this move, those are some things that I'm going to be looking at when I look at the Nadex ladders. I can start to look at, some of the binary contracts that are going to set up pretty close by that have some good runway to get me potentially to 100 if I'm shorting all the way down to this 68.80 level. Let's take a look at some other charts. That's the daily, which kind of gives us an anchor chart to look at. That could take some time to break since it's on a daily chart. Could take a couple of days for that. We can look as well at the 4-hour chart. Don't really have a flat level right here, but that is essentially the flat level on the daily chart. It's just when we get down to some of the other time frames, we want the granularity to be a little bit better. Here we have some really nice exact touches here and here, and even all the way back here, just like we saw on the daily chart. But really all I need is a couple of touches like this at a very precise level. And then here we are right here. Potentially this could be the breakthrough on the 4-hour chart, and we still have the confirmation of the downward trend on the daily chart. So let's take a look at the 2-hour and see if we have anything different. So the 2-hour, we've got something similar here. We've got price action trending down into this level. We don't really have a whole lot of price divergence. We've got a little leg of divergence right here. This is the first lower low that we see. But if price actually breaks through this level and holds and continues to move down, can we see this line making a lower low or at least an equal low to some of the other lows that we see in place? And I think that's probable. Same thing with the MACD here. We've got some slight divergence here, which is really kind of the only thing that makes me a little nervous about this trade, is I don't like to see a whole lot of divergence. But as we go up, we can look at the 4-hour and potentially the daily chart, and we don't have that type of diverging setup on the 4-hour. So really all I need is basically the 4-hour. If we had an 8-hour chart, I'd use the 4-hour and the 8-hour. But we don't have that. We have the 4-hour and the daily. And that's pretty much what what I'm looking at. So we got this little candle sitting up right here. More than likely, I'd protect myself on this one by looking at probably a weekly chart and give myself at least a couple of days. After all, it has taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 16, 24. I mean, this has probably taken maybe a month or two for this candle formation to set up right here to give us 1 touch, 2 touches, 3 touches, and now 4 touches. Usually, if it's going to touch that many times and hold this level like this on the 4th or 5th touch, usually we're going to get a break. But that doesn't necessarily give us any type of certainty that it's going to happen within the next couple of candles, which would be the next couple of days. So let's take a look. I think right here at the 4th touch, I'd probably look at a weekly chart that would give us at least, about 4 days of time, which more than likely, if we get small candles consolidating at this level, more than likely that gives me a pretty good inkling that if we get a breakdown through this level, that break is going to continue to, to fall. So let's take a look at, we'll just kind of get this down out of the way for us so we can see, we can kind of see what's going on. We can see our price action. Right now, we're currently at around that 70.80 level. And on the Aussie dollar here, we're looking at, let's see, these are daily contracts. So let's take a look at, as I mentioned, the weeklies. And that'll give us at least 3 days of time value, give us 3 candles on the daily chart. And then that setup on the 4-hour is pretty good. We can also look at some other time frames related to the 4-hour that might give us some opportunity there with some shorter time frames. So let's take a look at the weekly first. Here we've got let's see, 70, 80 level would really be the strike point. So 70, 75 would be one that would probably be, so that's right. So anytime you see the price action right at around 50, that means that the price action is right at that level, which is what we see right on the chart right here. So price level is right here. So it's right in or just below that 70, 80 level. That puts us in pretty well for a 1-to-1 reward to risk. That would be about the minimum that I would consider. And a reward to risk simply means that I want to risk $1 to make at least $1, if not $2 or $3 on the trade. I don't want to be risking $1 to make just 50 cents or 30 cents. If you do that enough times, you're just not setting yourself up with an edge in the markets. It would take an extremely high success rate to have that be an advantage for you. So you always want to be looking for something that is at least a 1-to-1, meaning we can buy it at 50, or I'm sorry, in this case we're going short, so we could sell it at 50 and cover it at 0, perhaps if we ride it to expiration. That would be a 1-to-1 reward to risk. This one here we could sell at 78, and we could actually this would be 22 pips of risk, or 22 points of risk. We could actually have an opportunity to have maybe a 3-to-1 reward to risk on this one. And then there's some other ones where the price action of strike price gets farther away, 69.75, which puts it a little farther down, which may not be advantageous for us in this particular trade. So I would probably look at the 50 and the 78. I think the 78 looks pretty reasonable. 70.25 would be the place to go to, which would be somewhere down around here. As we looked at this one on the larger screen, more than likely, let me see if I can do this and give us a little bit more runway to look at. There we go. That looks pretty good. We can see both. So if we're looking for a breakdown, looking at 78.75, if we short there, basically we're selling essentially at 72.75 because we're going short. So that gives us about almost about 28, 27 pips of risk, which means we have basically almost a 3-to-1 reward to risk on this one. So that's good. We can risk $1 to make potentially at least $1 on some portion of our trade. We can make $2 on another portion of our trade, and then potentially hold till expiration to make maybe $3 on the last portion of our trade. So the way that would work this trade is I would have a 27 point risk, which means that once the market, if it continued to break this level and continued to fall, then I would be covering probably half of my position at 72 minus 27. So that would put us down around, 62, 52, probably somewhere around 45 would be the cover point. If I dumped half of my position covered half my position at 45, I would make some profit there, and then I would basically have the trade to break even. So then I could look for another point, say around 20, which would give me my next 2-to-1 reward to risk, and then my final few contracts I might liquidate or hold till expiration, which might be at 0. And so that would be how I'd work a weekly contract. We'd have a little over 3 days to do that, almost 3.5 days. And that would essentially be, my setup for the Aussie dollar for this particular setup. I've got one other one that I wanted to take a look at But of course, before we leave this one, let's go ahead and take a look at, since I've already got you educated on this one, let's take a look at the 4-hour and see if there's anything shorter in terms of time. We still have a flat level on the 4-hour chart. More than likely, if we have this set up on the 4-hour and we have it on the daily, then we automatically have it on the time frame that's in between the two, which would be an 8-hour. So it'd be a 4-hour, 8-hour, and a daily. So in looking at the 4-hour, if we did have a 4-hour and an 8-hour setup, then that would mean that each one of these candles is 4 hours. So if we got a breakdown, this took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 candles, say 10 or 11 candles since the last touch. This would be the third touch. And so we would give ourselves, 4 hours. So we'd have about 6 candles on a daily contract. Let's take a look at the dailies and see what they look like. Maybe there's an opportunity there. But we'd actually have to get a breakdown from that level, a breakdown and a hold by the close of today, which would be, roughly the end of the session. So figure 3 o'clock Central Time. Let's take a look at the dailies. Let's see, we've got 10 hours on this one. Let's see if we can take a look at this one, 78.80. That would be fairly reasonable. Let's see, 78, or actually 78, 77.80. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong. Come on, Toby, I'm on the wrong one. Let's see, daily. Okay, so 70.80. So right around, this one's pretty close to the price action right here. So it'd really be not too many opportunities here. The 73 would be the only one on the daily, the 70.60, but it is pretty close to that 70.80 level. So the market wouldn't have to fall much in order for us to potentially make some money on that one. But there's only one option here on that one that gives us 10 hours. So basically that would be, about a little less than 3 candles on the 4-hour chart. So we'd have this candle plus basically 2 more candles. So it doesn't, as you can see, it doesn't give you a lot of time to work with on that one. If we went down to something, say a little shorter, like a 6-hour, then we can look at the 760. Still only gives us basically 1 contract on the dailies. So I don't know that I'd be looking to trade a daily on this one. I mean, you do have a few hours, but you only have about 2 candles. And in light of, all of the candles that it took to set up this flat level, that doesn't give you a whole lot. So I'd still be looking probably at a weekly candle, giving myself at least a couple of days for that breakdown to occur and for that trade setup to happen. So let's go ahead and take a look at, that'll wrap up the Aussie dollar. Let's take a look at the S&P. I wanted to take a look at that one. We'll start out with a daily chart and see what that looks like. Usually you can get some pretty good action going with the index markets. So here we're looking at, let's start with the daily chart. We'll get, that's what you always know in the top left what chart I'm on. It'll say daily, or it'll say 4-hour or 2-hour. So here on the daily chart, we've got a nice uptrend right here, and that's why I wanted to take a look at this one. Really nice uptrend. We've got the 10-period moving average, the 20-period, and the 50 all in alignment. They're all fanning out. You can see that the trend flow trade is working here as we get pullbacks into this buy zone between the 10 and the 20 period. We get these really small bullish candles, and once we get a break of the high, then the market takes off in that candle, or this grouping of candles basically sets up a swing low. So every time we get a pullback into these levels, a nice small candle sets up, break of the high, and we're off to the races. That puts up the next higher low. And you can see we've just been trending up here pretty well. We're pulling back in to that moving average zone, that sweet spot, and we're getting a nice candle there. We have to wait for this candle to set up on the daily chart. and wait for it to set up, and then look for a break of that candle tomorrow, unless we can find something down on a lower time frame that gets us set up. But at least on the higher time frame, the daily, we're in the buy zone. If these buy zones hold true, then folks have started buying as price pulls back into these zones. And so we'd actually have to go down to a lower time frame to find a setup that would work for us. So here on the 4 hour, we have the 50, the 20, and the 10 set up, but we really don't have a trend. We have pretty much a lot of flat across price action, which I don't like very much, so I'm not going to use, I don't really want to use the 4 hour. Let's see if we have anything on the 2 hour. We don't have the moving averages in alignment. Let's look at the 1 hour. Same thing there, that's no good. Let's look at the 30-minute, the 15-minute, and then let's take a look and see if we have anything on the 10-minute, the 5. So the 5 would start to get at least an uptrend of higher lows, trending up back into that level, but we'd probably have to go down to a 3-minute to actually get some type of a chart setup that we can trade. And we're really not getting a chart setup. Here we have, even on the 2-minute, we have a lower low, we have a lower high. I would really want a trend structure like this and a pullback into that zone. We got a nice candle there, but as you can see, we never broke the high of that candle. And if we did break the high, then the next move would have been to another higher high. We had all the moving averages in alignment. So as we go down, the 1 minute doesn't look any better. We've actually got a downtrend moving downward. So that one would be a bearish candle in and around the sell zone. We'd be looking at potentially going short here for a very short-term trade, maybe be in this trade for a couple of minutes, which might be just 5 candles. Currently, that's around 27.90. That's really not the trade that I want to be in, quite frankly, because if we go back to the daily chart, we know that this is just a pullback on the daily chart, and that's why a lot of the lower time frames are reflecting that. Once this starts to turn green and we start to get buyers coming into this market, you'll see a lot of those lower time frames start to trend upwards. But I really want to stay and trade with the trend formation that's here on the daily chart. We just don't have anything on the lower time frames just yet that are giving me an inclination that the lower time frames are starting to turn. So as we get this candle potentially maybe turning green, then we can continue to look throughout the remainder of today's session to see if there's some opportunities. Those opportunities will start to show up first in those lower time frames, like the 1 minute, the 2-minute chart. They'll start trending, and then we'll start being able to see those. But for right now, we'll have to stick with a daily or a weekly chart. That's going to be the only opportunity for us, since we're looking at the charts right now. I don't have the opportunity to look at them with you later on today. But let's take a look at this right here. We're right in the buy zone. We've got, let's take a look at a couple of these. The daily right here would give us probably the most amount of time, 10 hours. That would give us basically through till the end of the session today. And then it would take us into, oops, sorry, I'm in the, I want to be in the daily on the US 500. So this gives us 3 hours. The weekly would then give us the 3 days. 3 hours really isn't, almost 4 hours, that really isn't a whole lot of time. The only way that I would do that is if we could find something going long that would be very, very close. 27.97. We're right now at 27.91. So we actually have, some time here, basically the remainder of the day, to move 6 points. That could be reasonable. That would be not a whole lot of risk at about 25. But keep in mind, you only have the 4 hours. 60 really wouldn't give us a reward to risk. If that pulled back to 50, might consider that, but you still don't have a lot of time. It's a little bit more risky than I'd like to be. I think a safer bet would be looking at this thing. If this thing takes off and closes out bullish in the buy zone, then tomorrow we potentially get a break of the high. We potentially end up moving all the way up to a new high, which would be up past 2820. So in that case, looking at a weekly just makes a lot more sense. 2816 would be just below that most recent high of 2820. That would be a decent one. You can buy those for almost 20. You've got 3 days on that. That's very 2804 would be another one. We could have that one at around $43. That's pretty reasonable. It gives us almost a 2-to-1 reward to risk. Price only has to get to 2804, basically just right around this level. So it's fairly, keeping those strike prices close is always good. And then the other one, this one, probably not so good, doesn't give us a 1-to-1 reward to risk, but price really doesn't have to move very far at all. Price is already at 27.92 or thereabouts. So that one doesn't have to do anything, and you could potentially make, $40 on that one, but it doesn't give us the 1-to-1 reward to risk that I like, or it doesn't give us a 2-to-1 or even a 4-to-1 or more reward to risk like these two right here. So I like this one at 2804, and I like the 2816. We've got 3 days worth of time value there. Gives me plenty of opportunity to get out of the trade at break even if we get a little move above, but I'd have to wait for this candle to close out for today and then look for the break of that high. That would be for trading like the underlying market. I still like to do that with these contracts as well. But that's basically the trade setup right there. Looking at the U.S. and the U.S. equities, looking for that move higher. Any questions on those two trade setups and the technical strategies that I'm using to utilize those? We're always looking to trade with a trend, either up or down. Today we had a nice flat level break to the downside. We have a nice pullback trend flow trade moving to the upside. So you got a couple of nice views and some live price action as to how we work through those types of trade setups. Let me just wrap up here with one more slide. We'll kind of wrap up the session. So what Nadex is doing on these Tuesday morning sessions are really just making an investment in your success as an investor. That's why they sponsor events like this one today to do some live trading, help you guys understand the trade strategies that we're working with. A couple different ways for you folks to get in touch with us. Phone and email is listed here for any questions that you might have. You can ask me your questions right now. Just use the question box on your screen. As you've been doing, demo accounts also available to provide you some familiarity with the contracts we've been talking about today, help you understand how they ebb and flow and how the pricing works. For current members, if you'd like to begin trading again, go ahead and log into nadex.com. You can take advantage of the advanced education webinars that we're doing quarterly. That'll help take your trading to the next level, help you understand the two trade strategies that I was talking about today. The momentum breakout, the flat level break, and then the pullback trend flow trade. We'll show you all the ins and outs of those in the advanced education session. You can just call the 1-800 number and get involved in those if you so desire. If you're new to Nadex and you'd like to set up an account, just go to nadex.com, click on the orange box in the top right. It says sign up, just fill in your details there. Someone from Nadex will respond via email to get you set up. Before you sign off, there's a short survey upon your exit. Please let us know your thoughts. And let me see if there's any other questions here on my side that I need to answer. It doesn't look like any. I'll give you guys a minute if there are any other questions based on the price action or some of the trade setups that we talked about today. If not, we'll close out here pretty shortly and wrap up the session. If you want to see the session again, it'll be available on YouTube. And you can go ahead and get a replay of those two trade setups that I was talking about.